The old clock on the wall ticked with steady insistence, each second a hammer blow in Mr. Thompson's mounting anxiety. Mrs. Davis, the heart and soul of the fourth grade, had called in sick that morning, a sudden summer cold snatching her away. He glanced at the empty classroom, sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating the colorful posters and eager, empty desks. Finding a substitute, especially on short notice, felt like an impossible task. He scrolled through the approved substitutes list on his computer, a litany of names he knew and trusted, but each one met with the same disappointing result: unavailable. It was the busiest time of year, field trips, end-of-year projects, and the general end-of-school-year chaos meant everyone was stretched thin. Mr. Thompson sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. He hated the thought of splitting the class between the other already packed classrooms, but he couldn't leave them unsupervised. He picked up the phone, ready to make the difficult calls to parents, bracing himself for the inevitable complaints. Suddenly, a cheerful knock echoed through the office. A woman stood in the doorway, a bright smile lighting up her face. "Mr. Thompson?" she asked, her voice warm and confident. "I'm Ms. Stern, here to substitute for Mrs. Davis's class." Relief washed over Mr. Thompson in a tidal wave. He hadn't remembered calling her, but in the morning's frantic rush, anything was possible. He must have contacted the agency and simply forgotten. "Ms. Stern, thank goodness you're here," he exclaimed, ushering her inside. "I was just about to start making some very unpleasant phone calls." Ms. Stern laughed, a light, tinkling sound. "Happy to help," she said. "I love working with fourth graders. Such an imaginative age." She carried a large, brightly colored tote bag overflowing with what looked like books and art supplies. She seemed perfectly prepared. Mr. Thompson quickly showed her to the classroom, explaining the day's schedule and the current projects the students were working on. Ms. Stern listened attentively, nodding and asking insightful questions. Mr. Thompson felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Maybe this unexpected day wouldn't be so bad after all. He thanked Ms. Stern again, a genuine smile on his face, and hurried back to his office, ready to tackle the rest of the day, finally able to breathe. Inside the classroom, Ms. Stern surveyed her new domain. 23 bright, curious faces stared back at her, a mix of excitement and apprehension swirling in their eyes. She smiled, a wide, genuine-seeming smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "Good morning, class," she chirped, her voice carrying a cheerful lilt. "I'm Ms. Stern, and I'll be your teacher for today. It's wonderful to meet you all." A chorus of "Good morning, Ms. Stern" echoed back, a little hesitant, a little shy. Ms. Stern quickly launched into an icebreaker activity, a game of two truths and a lie, designed to help her learn their names and a little about them. The children giggled and squirmed as they tried to guess which statements were false, their initial apprehension melting away under Ms. Stern's warm and engaging presence. She effortlessly transitioned into the scheduled math lesson, explaining fractions with a creative and fun analogy using pizza slices. The children, usually restless and easily distracted, were captivated. Ms. Stern had a knack for making learning enjoyable, turning even the most challenging concepts into engaging games. During art class, she unveiled a surprise, a project to create miniature, dream gardens, in small terracotta pots. She provided colorful paints, glitter, small pebbles, and tiny plastic flowers, encouraging the students to let their imaginations run wild. The classroom buzzed with creative energy as the children carefully crafted their miniature worlds. Even during lunch, Ms. Stern engaged with the students, asking them about their favorite books, their hobbies, and their dreams for the future. She listened attentively, making each child feel valued and heard. By the end of the day, Ms. Stern had completely won them over. They adored her infectious enthusiasm, her creative lessons, and her genuine interest in their lives. She seemed like the coolest, most fun substitute teacher they had ever had. Little did they know, this charming facade hid a carefully constructed deception. As the final bell of the day rang, signaling the end of classes, Ms. Stern gathered the children's attention. "All right, everyone," she announced, her voice still bright and cheerful, "I have one more exciting thing to tell you about." She reached into her oversized tote bag and pulled out a stack of colorful, photocopied forms. Each form featured a cartoon drawing of a smiling sunflower and the words, "Help brighten our school," printed in a playful font. "We're going to be starting a very special project," Ms. Stern explained, distributing the forms to each student. "We're going to create a beautiful butterfly garden right here at school. It will be a place where we can learn about nature and enjoy the beauty of butterflies." She continued, "To make this garden a reality, we need a little bit of help. This form explains how you can contribute. We're asking for small donations, just a few dollars from each family, to help us buy the flowers, plants, and other supplies we need." The forms were simple, requesting the student's name, the amount of the donation, and a space for a parent's signature. There was no mention of a specific organization or account number, only a request for cash to be returned with the form the following day. "Bring these forms home to your parents," Ms. Stern instructed. "Explain to them how important this butterfly garden is to our school. I'm sure they'll be happy to help us make it a success." The children, still buzzing from the day's fun activities, eagerly took the forms, excited to participate in another project led by their new favorite teacher. They imagined vibrant butterflies fluttering around the school, a testament to their collective effort. As the students filed out of the classroom, clutching their fundraiser forms, Ms. Stern watched them with a calculating glint in her eyes. The first stage of her plan was complete. Now, all she had to do was wait for the donations to roll in. The butterfly garden, of course, was never going to exist. It was simply a means to an end, a way to exploit the children's enthusiasm and the parents' trust for her own selfish gain. Sarah skipped through the front door, her backpack bouncing against her back. "Mom! Mom!" she called out, her voice filled with excitement. "Guess what? We're going to build a butterfly garden at school." Emily, Sarah's mom, emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Oh, that sounds lovely, sweetie," she said, smiling at her daughter's enthusiasm. "Tell me all about it." Sarah eagerly recounted her day with Ms. Stern, describing the fun math lesson with the pizza fractions and the amazing art project where they made tiny dream gardens. She saved the best for last, pulling the brightly colored form from her backpack. "Ms. Stern said we need to raise money to buy flowers and plants," Sarah explained, handing the form to Emily. "She said it will be a beautiful place for butterflies, and we can learn about them." Emily took the form, her smile faltering slightly as she examined it. It looked rather unprofessional, more like something a child had designed than an official school document. The cartoon sunflower was cute, but the lack of a school logo or any contact information seemed odd. "That's wonderful, Sarah," Emily said, trying to sound enthusiastic. "But let's just take a closer look at this, okay?" She glanced at the amount Sarah had written in, $5, her entire allowance for the week. Sarah had circled it with a bright pink marker. "Can we send it in tomorrow, Mom? Please?" Sarah pleaded, her eyes wide with anticipation. "Ms. Stern said the sooner we get the money, the sooner we can start building the garden." Emily hesitated. She didn't want to dampen Sarah's excitement, but something about the form felt off. She decided to do a little investigating before sending in any money. "Of course, sweetie," she said, ruffling Sarah's hair. "We'll figure it out. Why don't you go finish your homework, and I'll make us some cookies." Sarah, satisfied with her mother's response, happily skipped off to her room, already dreaming of the butterflies that would soon be gracing her school. Emily, however, felt a growing sense of unease. She couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. She resolved to call the school in the morning to inquire about the fundraiser before sending in any money. Something about Ms. Stern and her butterfly garden just didn't add up. Later that evening, after Sarah was asleep, Emily sat at her kitchen table, the "Help Brighten Our School" form lying before her. She pulled out her laptop and began to research. First, she searched the school's website for any mention of a butterfly garden fundraiser. Nothing. Then, she checked the school's online calendar for upcoming events. Again, nothing. Her unease grew. She decided to check her bank account online. She had recently set up notifications for any charges over a certain amount, a precaution against fraud. As she scrolled through the recent transactions, her heart skipped a beat. There it was, a charge for $5.00 from an unfamiliar vendor, dated that very day. The amount matched the donation Sarah had pledged. Emily clicked on the transaction details, hoping to find more information, but there was only a vague description, online goods. She hadn't authorized any such charge. The realization dawned on her, Ms. Stern wasn't just running a fake fundraiser, she was also somehow accessing parents' bank accounts. A wave of anger washed over Emily, followed by a surge of fear. This wasn't just a simple scam, it was identity theft, potentially putting her entire family's financial security at risk. She immediately contacted her bank to report the unauthorized charge and cancel her debit card. As she waited on hold, listening to the repetitive hold music, she imagined Ms. Stern, sitting in a coffee shop somewhere, gleefully siphoning money from unsuspecting parents' accounts. The thought made her blood boil. She knew she had to act quickly to stop her. When a bank representative finally came on the line, Emily explained the situation, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and anxiety. The representative assured her that they would investigate the fraudulent charge and issue her a new card. But Emily knew that wasn't enough. She had to warn the school and the other parents before Ms. Stern could do any more damage. She resolved to call Mr. Thompson first thing in the morning. This butterfly garden scam had just turned into something much bigger, and much more dangerous. The next morning, Emily felt a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. After a restless night, she was determined to get to the bottom of the Ms. Stern situation. As soon as Sarah was on the school bus, Emily dialed the school's number. Mr. Thompson answered the phone, his voice sounding tired. "Good morning, this is Mr. Thompson." "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," Emily said, trying to keep her voice calm. "My name is Emily Carter, and I'm Sarah Carter's mother. Sarah is in Mrs. Davis's 4th grade class." "Yes, Mrs. Carter, how can I help you?" Mr. Thompson asked. "Sarah brought home a form yesterday for a butterfly garden fundraiser," Emily explained. "I was just calling to get some more information about it. I couldn't find anything about it on the school website." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "A butterfly garden fundraiser?" Mr. Thompson repeated, his voice laced with confusion. "I'm not aware of any such fundraiser. Let me check with the office staff." Emily waited anxiously, listening to the muffled sounds of Mr. Thompson speaking to someone in the background. After a few moments, he returned to the phone, his voice now filled with concern. "Mrs. Carter, I've spoken with Mrs. Henderson in the office, and she confirms that there is no butterfly garden fundraiser authorized by the school," he said. "In fact, Mrs. Davis is out sick today, and we had a substitute, a Ms. Stern, filling in." "Did she mention this fundraiser?" "Yes, Mr. Thompson, Ms. Stern was the one who sent the forms home with the children," Emily replied, her voice rising with urgency. "And I'm afraid it's more than just a fake fundraiser. I have an unauthorized charge on my bank statement for the same amount as the donation Sarah was supposed to bring in." Mr. Thompson was silent for a moment, absorbing the information. Emily could practically feel the color draining from his face through the phone line. "Mrs. Carter," he said finally, his voice low and grave, "I think we have a very serious problem." Mr. Thompson, his mind racing, immediately contacted Mrs. Henderson, his trusted secretary. "Mrs. Henderson," he said, his voice urgent, "can you pull up Mrs. Davis's substitute teacher request for today?" Mrs. Henderson, efficient as always, quickly accessed the information on her computer. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice filled with confusion, "there's no record of a substitute request for Mrs. Davis's class." "I know you were swamped this morning, but I always handle those requests. I haven't spoken to any substitute teachers, or agencies, in weeks." Mr. Thompson felt a cold dread creep into his bones. If he hadn't requested a substitute, and Mrs. Henderson hadn't either, then who had authorized Miss Stern to be in the classroom? He remembered the woman's confident demeanor, her seemingly prepared lesson plans, her easy way with the children. It had all seemed so legitimate. Mrs. Henderson, did anyone else have the authority to approve a substitute teacher request? He asked, grasping at straws. No, sir, Mrs. Henderson replied firmly. You and I are the only ones authorized to do that. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, forming a horrifying picture. Ms. Stern wasn't just a fake substitute, she was an imposter, a con artist who had somehow managed to infiltrate the school. And now, she was potentially stealing from the parents and endangering the children. Mr. Thompson's first priority was the safety of his students. He instructed Mrs. Henderson to immediately contact the police and report the incident. He also ordered her to begin calling all the parents of Mrs. Davis's students, warning them about the fake fundraiser and advising them to check their bank accounts for any unauthorized charges. He then raced towards Mrs. Davis's classroom, his heart pounding in his chest. He had to see for himself if Ms. Stern was still there. He had to protect his students from this dangerous woman. The cheerful atmosphere of the school suddenly felt tainted, poisoned by the presence of this deceptive stranger. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders. He had allowed this to happen, and now he had to fix it. As Mr. Thompson reached Mrs. Davis's classroom, he took a deep breath and cautiously opened the door. The room was empty. The miniature dream gardens, still vibrant with color, sat neatly on the desks. Ms. Stern was gone. A sense of relief washed over him, quickly followed by a renewed wave of anxiety. Where had she gone? Had she taken the children's cash donations with her? Had she already managed to steal more information from other parents? He scanned the room, searching for any clues, any sign of where she might have gone or what her next move might be. He noticed a small, folded piece of paper lying on Mrs. Davis's desk. He picked it up and unfolded it, his hands trembling slightly. It was a handwritten note, scrawled in a hasty, almost childish script. Thank you for your hospitality, it read. The butterfly garden will bloom soon. M.S. Mr. Thompson crumpled the note in his fist, his anger reaching a boiling point. She was mocking him, taunting him, leaving him to clean up her mess. He had to find her, and he had to do it quickly. Just then, his phone rang. It was Mrs. Henderson. Mr. Thompson, she said, her voice breathless, I've already spoken to 5 other parents, and they all have unauthorized charges on their bank statements. It's happening to everyone who sent in a donation. Mr. Thompson closed his eyes, battling a wave of nausea. This was worse than he had imagined. Ms. Stern had systematically targeted the parents, stealing their money and their personal information. He had to get to the bottom of this. Mrs. Henderson, he said, his voice firm despite his inner turmoil, please continue calling the parents. Tell them to contact their banks and the police. And please, double-check all our security protocols. We need to make sure this never happens again. He hung up the phone, his mind already racing ahead. He knew he couldn't handle this alone. He needed help. He needed the police. He needed to protect his school, his students, and their families from this ruthless con artist. Panic surged through Mr. Thompson as he dialed 911. He explained the situation to the dispatcher, his voice tight with urgency. We have an imposter who posed as a substitute teacher, collected money under false pretenses, and may have stolen personal information from our students' parents. The dispatcher assured him that officers were on their way. As he waited, Mr. Thompson paced back and forth in his office, replaying the events of the day in his mind. How could he have been so easily fooled? He prided himself on his judgment, his ability to spot trouble a mile away. But Ms. Stern had completely blindsided him. He thought of the children, their innocent faces, their eagerness to please. He shuddered to think what could have happened if Ms. Stern had had more sinister intentions. He had been so focused on finding a substitute that he had overlooked the most basic security measures. The first police officers arrived, their presence a stark reminder of the seriousness of the situation. They questioned Mr. Thompson and Mrs. Henderson, taking detailed notes about Ms. Stern's appearance, her behavior, and the details of the scam. While the police interviewed the school staff, other officers began canvassing the neighborhood, searching for any sign of Ms. Stern. They showed her picture to local business owners, asking if anyone had seen her. Meanwhile, the phones in the school office continued to ring non-stop, as more and more parents discovered the unauthorized charges on their bank statements. The atmosphere in the school was tense, a mixture of fear, anger, and disbelief hanging in the air. Mr. Thompson knew that the school's reputation was on the line. He had to act quickly to regain the trust of the parents and the community. He decided to hold an emergency meeting that evening to address the situation and outline the steps he was taking to prevent future incidents. He owed it to his students and their families to make things right. He would not let Ms. Stern destroy the school he had worked so hard to build. That afternoon, as Sarah sat at the kitchen table, diligently working on her homework, she overheard Emily speaking on the phone. Emily's voice was low and serious, a stark contrast to her usual cheerful tone. Sarah strained to listen, her curiosity piqued. "Yes, that's correct. The unauthorized charge was for $5, the same amount as the Butterfly Garden donation." "I understand. Thank you for your help." Emily hung up the phone with a sigh, her face etched with worry. Sarah, unable to contain herself any longer, spoke up. "Mom. What's wrong? Are you okay?" Emily turned to Sarah, forcing a smile. "Everything's fine, sweetie," she said, but Sarah could see the anxiety in her eyes. "I was just talking to the bank about a little mix-up. Nothing to worry about." But Sarah wasn't convinced. She had a feeling that the phone call had something to do with the Butterfly Garden fundraiser. "Was it about Ms. Stern?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Emily hesitated, unsure of how to explain the situation to her daughter. She didn't want to frighten her, but she also didn't want to lie. "Yes, it was about Ms. Stern," she admitted. "There seems to have been a little misunderstanding." "Did I do something wrong?" Sarah asked, her eyes filling with tears. "Did I mess up the form?" Emily rushed over to Sarah, pulling her into a hug. "Oh, honey, no. You didn't do anything wrong," she said, her voice filled with reassurance. "This isn't your fault at all. It's a grown-up problem, and we're going to take care of it." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was somehow responsible. She had been so excited about the Butterfly Garden, so eager to please Ms. Stern. Now, it seemed like her enthusiasm had caused trouble. As Emily continued to make phone calls and exchange worried glances with her husband, David, Sarah retreated into herself, her joy replaced by a heavy sense of guilt. The Butterfly Garden, which had seemed so magical just yesterday, now felt like a source of shame and anxiety. She wished she had never brought the form home in the first place. As the police investigation got underway, detectives arrived at the school, their serious expressions a stark contrast to the usual cheerful atmosphere. They began interviewing the students in Mrs. Davis's class, one by one, asking them about their interactions with Ms. Stern. Sarah, her heart pounding in her chest, was called into the principal's office. She sat nervously in a chair, facing a kind-looking policewoman with a notepad. "Sarah, my name is Officer Jones," the policewoman said gently. "We're just trying to find out a little more about Ms. Stern. Can you tell me what she was like?" Sarah hesitated, unsure of what to say. She remembered Ms. Stern's warm smile, her fun lessons, her genuine interest in the students. But she also remembered the worried look on her mom's face and the confusing phone call she had overheard. "She was nice," Sarah said quietly. "She taught us about fractions and we made dream gardens. And she told us about the Butterfly Garden." Officer Jones nodded patiently. "Did Ms. Stern ever ask you to do anything that made you feel uncomfortable?" she asked. Sarah thought for a moment. Ms. Stern hadn't asked her to do anything directly, but the request for cash donations felt a little strange now. She asked us to bring money for the butterfly garden, Sarah said. But my mom said it wasn't on the school website. Officer Jones' eyebrows raised slightly. Did she say where the money should go? No, Sarah replied. Just to bring it back to her tomorrow. Officer Jones continued to ask Sarah questions, carefully piecing together a picture of Ms. Stern's activities. She asked about Ms. Stern's appearance, her mannerisms, and anything else that Sarah could remember. As Sarah answered the questions, she began to realize the gravity of the situation. Ms. Stern wasn't just a fun substitute teacher, she was a criminal who had tricked them all. The realization made her feel angry and betrayed. She had trusted Ms. Stern, and Ms. Stern had taken advantage of her trust. When the interview was over, Sarah felt exhausted and shaken. She walked back to her classroom, her head swimming with confusion and fear. The school, which had always felt like a safe and happy place, now felt like a place of danger and deception. As word of the scam spread throughout the community, a wave of anger and anxiety washed over the parents of Mrs. Davis's students. The emergency meeting that evening was packed, with parents overflowing into the hallway outside the school auditorium. Mr. Thompson stood on the stage, his face etched with exhaustion and remorse. He began by apologizing for the breach of security and assuring the parents that he was doing everything in his power to catch Ms. Stern and prevent similar incidents from happening in the future. I understand your anger and your fear, Mr. Thompson said, his voice filled with sincerity. I know that I have let you down, and I take full responsibility for what happened today. But I want to assure you that the safety and well-being of your children is my top priority. He then outlined the steps he was taking to improve security at the school, including stricter background checks for all substitute teachers and volunteers, enhanced security protocols for handling money and personal information, and increased communication with parents. Several parents spoke up, expressing their concerns and demanding answers. Some were angry and accusatory, while others were more understanding and supportive. But all were united in their desire to protect their children from harm. Emily stood up and addressed the crowd. I know we're all scared and angry right now, she said, her voice trembling slightly. But we can't let this incident divide us. We need to work together to support our school and our children. We need to teach them to be vigilant and to speak up when something doesn't feel right. Her words resonated with the other parents, and a sense of unity began to emerge from the chaos. They realized that they were all in this together, and that they needed to support each other to get through this difficult time. As the meeting drew to a close, Mr. Thompson thanked the parents for their understanding and their support. He promised to keep them informed of the progress of the police investigation and to do everything in his power to restore their trust. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but he was determined to make things right. The safety of his students depended on it. Back at home, Emily found Sarah sitting on her bed, staring blankly at the wall. Emily sat beside her and gently took her hand. Sarah, honey, I know you're upset, she said softly. But I want you to know that none of this is your fault. Ms. Stern tricked all of us, even the grown-ups. Sarah looked up at Emily, her eyes still filled with sadness. But I brought the form home, she said. If I hadn't, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Emily shook her head. That's not true, sweetie, she said. Ms. Stern was the one who did something wrong. She lied to us and she stole from us. You were just trying to help. She continued, sometimes, bad people do bad things, even when we're trying to do something good. It's important to remember that their actions are not a reflection of you. Emily pulled Sarah into a hug. I know it's hard to understand right now, she said. But I promise you, everything is going to be okay. We're going to catch Ms. Stern, and we're going to learn from this experience. She gently explained to Sarah that it was important to be careful about trusting strangers and to always ask questions if something seemed suspicious. She also emphasized the importance of telling a trusted adult if someone ever made her feel uncomfortable. This is a good lesson for both of us, Emily said. We'll both be more careful from now on." As Sarah snuggled into Emily's arms, she began to feel a little bit better. She still felt a pang of guilt, but she also felt a sense of relief knowing that her mom didn't blame her. Later that evening, before Sarah went to bed, Emily read her a story about a brave little girl who stood up to a bully. The story reminded Sarah that even though she was small, she could still be strong and courageous. And that even when bad things happened, she could always find a way to learn and grow from the experience. The butterfly garden scam had been a difficult and upsetting experience, but it had also taught Sarah a valuable lesson about trust, vigilance, and the importance of speaking up. And that was a lesson she would never forget. While Emily was comforting Sarah, the police investigation was gaining momentum. Detectives were able to track Ms. Stern's movements using security camera footage from nearby businesses. They discovered that she had taken a taxi to a bus station shortly after leaving the school. The police immediately alerted authorities at bus stations and train stations throughout the state, providing them with a description of Ms. Stern and a photograph obtained from the school's security system. They also issued a warrant for her arrest on charges of fraud, identity theft, and endangering the welfare of children. Meanwhile, detectives were working to uncover Ms. Stern's true identity. They discovered that Ms. Stern was an alias and that the woman's real name was Deborah Miller. They also learned that she had a long history of similar scams, targeting schools and churches in other states. Deborah Miller was a skilled con artist, able to charm and manipulate people with ease. She had a knack for identifying vulnerabilities and exploiting them for her own gain. She had carefully planned her scheme at Mrs. Davis's school, knowing that the principal was desperate for a substitute teacher and that the parents were likely to trust anyone who seemed to care about their children. As the police closed in on Deborah Miller, she grew increasingly desperate. She knew that her time was running out and that she needed to escape before she was caught. She purchased a bus ticket to another state, hoping to disappear and start a new life under a new alias. But the police were hot on her trail, and it was only a matter of time before they caught up with her. The net was closing, and Deborah Miller's days of deception were numbered. The authorities were determined to bring her to justice and ensure that she could no longer prey on unsuspecting children and their families. At the bus station, Deborah Miller, disguised in a baseball cap and sunglasses, nervously clutched her bus ticket. She scanned the crowd, her eyes darting back and forth, searching for any sign of the police. She knew that they were closing in, and she had to escape before it was too late. She boarded the bus, found a seat near the back, and tried to blend in with the other passengers. But her heart was pounding in her chest, and her hands were trembling. She knew that she couldn't outrun the law forever. As the bus pulled away from the station, Deborah Miller breathed a sigh of relief. She had made it. She was free. But her sense of triumph was short-lived. Just as the bus reached the edge of town, a police car pulled in front of it, blocking its path. Other police cars swarmed around the bus, their sirens wailing. Deborah Miller's heart sank. She knew that it was over. She had been caught. Police officers boarded the bus and began searching for Deborah Miller. They quickly identified her, despite her disguise, and placed her under arrest. As she was led off the bus in handcuffs, Deborah Miller hung her head in shame. Her days of deception were finally over. Back at the school, Mr. Thompson received a call from the police, informing him that Deborah Miller had been apprehended. He breathed a sigh of relief. The nightmare was finally over. He immediately shared the news with Mrs. Henderson and the other staff members, who cheered with joy. He knew that the school still had a long way to go to recover from the incident, but he was confident that they would get through it together. He had learned a valuable lesson about the importance of security and the need to be vigilant. And he was determined to make sure that nothing like this ever happened again. The focus now shifted to healing the community and helping the students and parents recover from the trauma they had experienced. The butterfly garden scam had been a painful experience, but it had also brought the school community closer together. They had learned the importance of trust, vigilance, and the power of unity. And those were lessons that would stay with them forever. With Deborah Miller in custody, the police were able to recover most of the stolen money. The funds were returned to the parents, bringing a sense of closure to the financial aspect of the scam. A few days later, Mrs. Davis returned to school, fully recovered from her illness. The students were overjoyed to see her, showering her with hugs and handmade cards. Mrs. Davis addressed the students, acknowledging the difficult experience they had gone through. She praised them for their bravery and their honesty, and she reassured them that they were safe and loved. "I know that what happened was scary and confusing," Mrs. Davis said, her voice gentle and reassuring. "But it's important to remember that we are all in this together. We can learn from this experience, and we can grow stronger as a result." She then led the class in a discussion about trust, honesty, and the importance of speaking up when something doesn't feel right. She encouraged the students to share their feelings and to ask questions. Sarah, who had been quiet and withdrawn since the incident, finally raised her hand. "Mrs. Davis," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I feel bad that I brought the form home. I didn't know it was a trick." Mrs. Davis smiled warmly at Sarah. "Oh, honey, you did nothing wrong," she said. "You were just being helpful. It's important to remember that we can't blame ourselves for other people's bad actions." She continued, "What's important is that we learn from our mistakes and that we continue to trust our instincts. If something doesn't feel right, it's always best to ask questions and to seek help from a trusted adult." Mrs. Davis then announced a new project for the class. They would be creating a real butterfly garden in the school courtyard. This time, however, they would be working with the school administration and the Parent-Teacher Association to ensure that everything was done properly and ethically. The students cheered with excitement, eager to put their newfound knowledge into practice. The butterfly garden, once a symbol of deception, would now become a symbol of hope, healing, and community. In the weeks that followed, the students worked diligently to create their butterfly garden. They researched different types of butterflies and the plants they needed to survive. They carefully selected colorful flowers and fragrant herbs, creating a welcoming habitat for the beautiful creatures. The parents and the community rallied around the school, donating supplies and volunteering their time. They built a small fence to protect the garden from animals and installed a bird bath to provide water for the butterflies. The butterfly garden became a symbol of resilience, a testament to the school's ability to overcome adversity. It was a place where students could learn about nature, connect with each other, and heal from the trauma they had experienced. One sunny afternoon, as the butterflies began to flutter around the garden, Sarah approached Mrs. Davis. "Mrs. Davis," she said, her voice filled with pride, "I'm really glad we built this garden. It's so beautiful." Mrs. Davis smiled at Sarah. "I'm glad too, honey," she said. "It's a reminder that even when bad things happen, we can always create something beautiful." She continued, "This garden is a symbol of our strength and our unity. It shows that we can overcome any challenge, as long as we work together." Sarah nodded, her eyes shining with hope. She had learned a valuable lesson about trust, vigilance, and the importance of community. And she knew that the butterfly garden would always be a reminder of that lesson. As the butterflies danced around her, she felt a sense of peace and gratitude. The butterfly garden scam had been a difficult experience, but it had also taught her the importance of resilience and the power of hope. And that was a lesson she would carry with her always. The school and community had not only recovered but had grown stronger and more united. The butterfly garden was more than just a garden, it was a symbol of their collective strength and their unwavering spirit. Mr. Thompson, inspired by the community's resilience, dedicated himself to ensuring the school's security was unbreachable. He worked with local law enforcement to implement new safety protocols. One of the most significant changes was the implementation of a mandatory identification check for all visitors. No longer could anyone simply walk into the school, they had to present a valid photo ID and state their purpose for visiting. This measure, though seemingly simple, provided a significant deterrent to potential intruders. Furthermore, Mr. Thompson organized training sessions for the staff, teaching them how to identify suspicious behavior and respond to potential threats. He emphasized the importance of communication and teamwork, creating a culture of vigilance throughout the school. The parents also played a crucial role in enhancing school security. They formed a volunteer patrol, taking turns monitoring the school grounds during drop-off and pick-up times. Their presence provided an extra layer of security, deterring any would-be troublemakers. Mr. Thompson also invested in upgrading the school's security technology. He installed new security cameras throughout the building and improved the school's alarm system. These measures provided an added level of protection, ensuring that the school was well equipped to handle any potential security threats. The transformation was remarkable. The school, once vulnerable and exposed, now felt safe and secure. The students, parents, and staff could once again focus on learning and growing, without the constant fear of danger lurking in the shadows. The butterfly garden scam had been a painful experience, but it had also served as a catalyst for positive change, making the school a safer and more secure place for everyone. The community had learned a valuable lesson about the importance of vigilance and the power of unity. And they were determined to never let their guard down again. Emily, observing Sarah's renewed enthusiasm and confidence as she worked on the butterfly garden, felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had been so worried about the impact of the scam on Sarah, but now she could see that her daughter was learning valuable lessons about resilience and the importance of community. She also noticed that Sarah was becoming more assertive and questioning, no longer willing to blindly trust authority figures. She was learning to think critically and to speak up when something didn't seem right. One day, as Emily was volunteering in the school library, Sarah approached her with a concerned look on her face. "Mom," she said, "Mr. Henderson asked me to collect money for the book fair, but he didn't give me a receipt book. Is that okay?" Emily's heart skipped a beat. She remembered the butterfly garden scam and the importance of being vigilant. She took a deep breath and calmly responded, "That's a good question, sweetie. It's always a good idea to have a receipt for any money that you collect. Let's go talk to Mr. Thompson about it." Together, Emily and Sarah approached Mr. Thompson, who immediately apologized for the oversight and provided Sarah with a receipt book. He praised Sarah for her vigilance and her honesty, telling her that she had done the right thing by speaking up. Emily felt a surge of pride in her daughter. She had learned from her experience and was now using her newfound knowledge to protect herself and others. The butterfly garden scam had been a difficult experience, but it had also empowered Sarah to become a more confident, assertive, and responsible young woman. As they walked home from school that day, Emily squeezed Sarah's hand. "I'm so proud of you, sweetie," she said. "You've learned so much from this experience, and you're becoming such a strong and brave young woman." Sarah smiled at Emily, her eyes shining with pride. She knew that the butterfly garden scam had changed her, but she also knew that she had emerged from the experience stronger and more resilient. And she was grateful for the lessons she had learned and the support she had received from her family, her school, and her community. The butterfly garden, once a symbol of deception, was now a symbol of her personal growth and her unwavering spirit. Time passed, and the butterfly garden flourished. It attracted butterflies of all shapes and sizes, creating a vibrant and beautiful space for the students to enjoy. The school, once shrouded in fear and suspicion, was now filled with laughter and joy. Mr. Thompson, forever changed by the experience, became a passionate advocate for school safety. He shared his story with other principals and educators, urging them to prioritize security and to be vigilant against potential threats. He also worked with local lawmakers to strengthen laws against scams targeting schools and children. He was determined to make sure that Deborah Miller's actions would not be repeated. The butterfly garden scam had been a painful chapter in the school's history, but it had also taught everyone valuable lessons about trust, vigilance, community, and resilience. And those lessons would stay with them forever, shaping their actions and their decisions for years to come. Sarah, now a confident and assertive young woman, often visited the butterfly garden, remembering the lessons she had learned. She knew that even when bad things happened, she could always find strength in her community and in her own unwavering spirit. One day, as she was tending to the flowers in the garden, she saw a new student standing nearby, looking lost and confused. Sarah approached her and offered her a friendly smile. "Hi," she said. "My name is Sarah. Welcome to our school." The new student smiled back, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she said. "I'm Emily." Sarah knew that the new student might be feeling scared and overwhelmed, but she also knew that she was not alone. She had a community of support to help her through any challenges she might face. And Sarah was determined to be a part of that community, offering her friendship and her support to anyone who needed it. The butterfly garden, once a symbol of deception, was now a symbol of hope, healing, and the power of human connection. And that was a legacy that would endure for generations to come. Years later, Sarah, now a young adult, returned to her old elementary school. She was there to speak to the current fourth-grade class about her experiences with the butterfly garden scam. Mr. Thompson, now retired, was also in attendance, beaming with pride as he watched Sarah address the students. He had always known that she was special, and he was so grateful that she had turned a difficult experience into a positive one. Sarah began by telling the students about Ms. Stern and how easily she had won them over with her charm and her fun lessons. She explained how excited they had been about the butterfly garden and how disappointed they were when they discovered that it was all a lie. "It was a difficult experience," Sarah said, her voice filled with emotion. "But it also taught me some valuable lessons. I learned that it's important to be careful about who you trust and to always ask questions if something doesn't seem right." She continued, "I also learned that it's important to speak up when you see something wrong, even if it's scary. Because if you don't, bad people can get away with hurting others." Sarah then shared her story about questioning Mr. Henderson about the receipt book and how proud she had felt when she had stood up for what was right. She encouraged the students to do the same, to be vigilant and to always trust their instincts. "You are all strong and capable," Sarah said, her voice filled with confidence. "You have the power to make a difference in the world. Just remember to be careful, to be honest, and to always speak up when something feels wrong." As Sarah finished her speech, the students